Some creatures live between the realms of light and shadow, belonging fully to neither. The crow is one of them. Its feathers catch the sun, yet swallow every color. Its sharp eyes notice what we miss. Across centuries and continents, people have looked at crows and seen sentinels, tricksters, prophets, and companions to the unseen. To watch a crow is to stare into a thin place, the space where ordinary life ends and mystery begins. For as long as people have planted grain, they've contended with crows. Clever enough to recognize a human face and bold enough to perch on a scarecrow's shoulder, this bird has always been a nuisance and an oracle. They arrive when the fields ripen and linger after harvest, a black punctuation mark in the rhythm of the seasons. In British and Appalachian folklore, crows live at the edge of things, hedgerows, tree lines, and fence posts, those borders where the domestic meets the wild. To farmers, their dark shapes against a bright sky look like moving shadows from another realm. The old rhyme gave meaning to every sighting. 1 for sorrow, 2 for joy, 3 for a girl, 4 for a boy. A single crow was never ignored. Some said it carried warning. Others said it bore a message from the dead. It wasn't fear so much as respect. The crow was thought to see what people could not. During harvest festivals in parts of Britain, farmers tossed the first crumbs of bread or grain to the crows. This wasn't just appeasement. It honored the birds as guardians of the fields, intermediaries between the living and the dead. To feed the crows was to feed one's ancestors, who were said to travel with flocks of black wings. That belief crossed the Atlantic. In Appalachia, bits of stale bread or cornbread were crumbled near the fence line for the watchers. Some said it kept away blight. Others said it pleased the spirits of the soil. Either way, the crows always came. Now, folklore has always known what science later proved. Crows are cunning. They use tools, recognize faces, and even hold what looks like funerals for their dead. To old storytellers, that kind of intelligence meant the crow was more than an animal, perhaps another kind of person. Among the indigenous peoples of the Pacific Northwest, crow is the trickster. He's the one who stole the sun and brought light to the world, not out of kindness, but out of curiosity. He wanted the bright thing for himself, and in taking it, he gave it to everyone. There's a story that tells how the crow tricked a great chief who kept the daylight locked in a box. Crow became a speck of dust, slipped into the chief's daughter's water, and was reborn as her child. As that child, he begged for the box of light as a toy, opened it, and released the sun. Crow's mischief wasn't moral or kind. It was creative chaos. Change through disorder, transformation through trouble. Now, in European witchcraft lore, crows show up again as agents of shape-shifting and rebellion. Witches were said to take the form of crows, to fly unseen or spy on their neighbors. In 1662, the Scottish witch Isabel Gowdy claimed she could turn herself into a crow by chanting, "I shall go into a crow with sorrow and sigh, and I shall go in the devil's name, aye, till I fly." It wasn't guilt, she confessed, but belief. The crow was her other body, the spirit form that traveled beyond the limits of flesh. That trickster energy became the witch's own, freedom through the uncanny. In Appalachian folktales, a talking crow might help a clever girl escape a cruel master, or trick a greedy man into losing everything he stole. Crow's lessons were never simple. they came wrapped in irony, humility, and consequence. The bird's wisdom always cut both ways. Crow omens are found almost everywhere. Their meanings depend on timing, direction, and number. A crow flying east at sunrise was lucky. One tapping on a window meant change or illness. A murder of crows circling a house without landing foretold death inside. In Ireland, crows belonged to the Morrígan, the goddess of battle, prophecy, and sovereignty. She often appeared as a crow over the battlefield, calling the names of the doomed. Her voice wasn't the only sound of death, but of destiny itself. That idea followed the crow north into Scotland and England, where a lone bird at dawn marked a day of consequence, good or bad, depending on one's conscience. If you'd done wrong, its cry might sound like judgment. If your heart was clean, it was a blessing. In Appalachia, where Irish, African, and indigenous traditions mingled, the crow became part of daily superstition. If a crow caws 3 times and flies over your head, people said change is coming. The direction of flight mattered too. Flying away meant trouble leaving. Flying towards meant trouble arriving. Still, not every sign was grim. A lone crow near the barn could mean that the land spirits were awake and listening. To ignore that visitation was to invite misfortune. Crows occupy a place of uneasy reverence because they witness without interfering. They're present at births and burials, at endings and beginnings. They scavenge death and announce arrival. That's why they're called the Watcher Between Worlds. In old Appalachian burial custom, crows perched on churchyard fences to guide the soul of the newly dead. Their calls were farewells carried on black wings. In some hoodoo and southern conjure practices, crows were treated as messengers of spirit. Their calls before spell work could be read like omens. A sharp caw from the east might signal approval from the ancestors. A long silence afterwards might mean wait. To give the crow your attention is to admit a simple truth. Power often wears a dark color. What frightens us in the daylight may be sacred at dusk. For the folk magician, crow's power is clear: intelligence, adaptability, and protection through awareness. Working with crow energy means accepting paradox, wisdom born through trouble, or guidance that unsettles before it teaches. A single black feather can be carried for discernment and is said to sharpen the intuition and guard against deceit. A carved crow on an altar stands as a guardian of liminal work for divination, scrying, and spirit contact. In protective magic, blackberry thorns and crow feathers might be bound together and hung above a door, the thorns to bar intrusion, and the feather to keep perception sharp. Crow doesn't flatter, it reveals. That's its medicine. The crow isn't a gentle teacher. It speaks through riddles and reversals. In a world that demands certainty, crow asks questions. What are you clinging to? What truth have you refused to see? The trickster's role is necessary. Without disruption, the world would stagnate. Crows remind us that chaos precedes clarity, that endings are just new beginnings disguised as loss. When you see a crow, it may not bring comfort, but it brings truth. Something is shifting. Something is about to begin. Next time a crow crosses your path, stop for a moment. Ask yourself what's changed since you last paid attention. What have you been avoiding? What boundary have you neglected to tend? If one lingers near your home, acknowledge it. Speak your gratitude aloud even if you don't yet know why it came. If a whole murderer circles overhead, look for meaning instead of fear. What pattern in your life might have drawn the watcher's notice? Crows have always stood at the edge of field and forest, bridge and graveyard. They remind us that between life and death, order and mystery, there's always conversation. They are the eyes of the in-between, and for those who pay attention, they are never just birds. This has been Papa G, and you've been listening to Folklorium, the online magazine brought to life, which you can read at folklorium.com. You can also tune into my podcast, The Feral Folklorist, where each episode explores a real haunting, folktale, or magical belief, and then digs into the spellcraft, superstition, and shadow work behind it. And if you'd like to help keep these stories going, please consider visiting my Patreon at patreon.com/PapaG for exclusive magical content.